You know what's wild? Do you really know what's wild? The richest country in the world, you can work full time and still be homeless. Did you know that? Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Straight No Chaser podcast, where we serve truth hot, sharp, and unfiltered. And I'm your host, Bishop. And today, we're talking about something too many folks are living through and too many others are ignoring: housing insecurity. Now, let me be clear. We're not just talking about people sleeping in tents and under bridges. No, no, no. Housing insecurity is way more than that. And this episode is going to help to break it down for you, right? Because we're talking about the mom working full time, you know, couch surfing with her children, the Uber driver living out of his car, the tenant who paid rent for years but got priced out with one renewal notice. That's what we're talking about today. That's what we're talking about. And this ain't just a crisis. This is a policy. This is capitalism, right? Playing Monopoly with people's homes. And people are losing quietly, but they're losing desperately, invisibly. So we're going to get into it today, okay? We're going to get into this discussion today because we can't change things. What do we say? What do we always say? We can't change it if we're not willing to talk about it. And I'm willing to talk about it. Now, we're going to start in this discussion going way back, right? We're going to go way back. Let's start with evictions. Because, see, back in the day, if somebody got evicted from their place, it was seen as a last resort, right? But now evictions are automated. Did you know that? That now evictions are automated. See, according to the the eviction lab at Princeton, millions of Americans face eviction every year. Because remember, during the pandemic, there were a lot of protections that were put in place to ensure you wouldn't lose your housing. But after those pandemic protections ended, evictions filings jumped back up fast. Why? Rich people wanted their places back when you weren't paying. They said, yeah, compassion, empathy, we don't possess that. You didn't pay, gotta go. And some cities are even seeing higher rates of evictions than what they saw before COVID even happened. You know, that's how bad this is. That a lot of the we in some cities you got a lot more evictions than you had before the pandemic occurred. And I need you to understand something. Get this part. Corporate landlords, they're using software, right? They're using software to set rent prices and to trigger eviction notices automatically. We're not talking a people element in here anymore. Now the machines are deciding whether or not you get to stay in a place you call home, right? Because now a missed payment is not a conversation. Not anymore. A missed payment ain't a conversation no more. It gets a court date. If you're lucky, you get a court date. If you're lucky. Because most renters, most people just leave. Think about it. When something like that happens, you just leave, right? Because you don't have enough money to fight the man, so you leave. You pack your bags and you go. And when you leave, you don't just lose your home. Understand, when you leave a place that you called home, you didn't just lose your home. You lost your stability. Yeah, you lost your stability. You lost your credit. Sometimes you lose even custody of your children. Yeah, homelessness can do that to you. Because if you don't have a place to call home, sometimes they say you can't even be a parent to your children. Yeah, that's how that system is set up. You can't even be a parent to your kids because you don't have a place to call home. And you don't have a place to call home, not because you don't have a job, not because you don't care about your children, but because the system cripples you. There are many working class people who are homeless. So don't get it twisted. Homelessness is not just for those who choose not to work. That ain't even the case, okay? That's not even the case. Homelessness is deeper than that. See, you're not irresponsible if you're homeless. It ain't always about irresponsibly. You're not failing. The rent is rigged. The whole thing is rigged against you. It is. And I'm going to explain to you why I say the whole thing is rigged against. This is the reason why I say that. We got to kill that lie that homelessness is about laziness. Cuz that's not true. That's just not true. Homelessness is not about laziness. There are a whole bunch of people who have jobs who also still don't have a home. That doesn't mean that they're lazy. It means that things are expensive. I'm going to give you an example. For example, like in California, right? Over 50% of the homeless adults reporting in California, like people who say they're homeless in California, they have jobs. These are not unemployed people. But for whatever reason, the money on that job isn't enough to afford a place to call home, right? And this isn't something that's specific to California. In cities across America, teachers, bus drivers, home health aides, they're living in motels, cars, or they're doubling or tripling up with family. Why? It's too expensive to find an affordable place to live. Affordable, not fancy. Notice my keywords that I'm using, not luxury, affordable. In America now, affordability is luxury, right? If you can afford a clean, safe environment to live in, you are living in luxury. Even if it isn't your standard definition of luxury. That's how low we've fallen as a country. Having a clean place to stay, even if there are all these other host of issues, as long as it's clean, that's luxury. Oh wow, how the mighty have fallen. How we have fallen. Understand, there are fast food workers who serve people every day, but they go to sleep in a shelter at night. They don't have a home to go home to. That doesn't exist for them. How is it that someone can flip burgers for 40 hours a week, but you still can't afford a room? That's not laziness. That's math, y'all. That's math. Pure math. And you can't change the math wishing that the math will change. The reality is there's a reason why it doesn't add up. We told people to get jobs. They did that. They did that. And they're still sleeping on an air mattress in someone else's living room. So they played the game, but still came up on the losing side anyway. Yep. Even after playing the game. Yep. Working full time and being homeless should never exist in the same sentence. It shouldn't be. Not if you're working a job. See, I'd have a different, I guess, perspective if you didn't even work and you could work. Understand, you're able-bodied and you can work, but you choose not to. Working and homelessness shouldn't be in the same sentence. But in America, it is normal. It's not an exception. It's not something you see that's odd and you go, I wonder how that happened. No, that's normal. It is perfectly reasonable and normal in America for you to work beside somebody that you work beside every day. And every day they don't have a home to go back home. They don't have a home to go back to. They have a car, a shelter. You know, you understand? An alleyway, an abandoned building. That happens a lot more than I think most Americans want to be honest about. But we got to be honest about it, because we cannot change it if we don't acknowledge it. Now I'm going to tell you who profits off of all of this suffering. Because again, what did I tell you? People monetize off of our poverty and off of our suffering. There's a lot of money to be made from never cutting us a break. Okay? A lot of the money to be made for not cutting us a break. But you know who's profiting off of this? Wall Street. The big investment firms like Blackstone have bought up tens of thousands of single family homes. See, that's a big part of it. Government allowing these investors to come into our communities, buy up all the homes in the community, shoot the prices up. So even if your house was paid for, the property taxes become so egregious, you got to give up on that house anyway. See, they do it to homeowners too, not just renters. But they come into your community and they buy up some of these homes to turn them into rental properties, right? Rental properties. But these corporate landlords, all they do is jack up the rent. They don't want to fix anything because, again, they want the maximum of return on investment by putting in the least amount of effort and resources. And then they want to push people out the second they get behind. They're not going to work with you. My grandmother always says charity starts at home. Be mindful about where you are, people. Be mindful about where you are, because see, these rich people, that's why they don't give us no charity, no deference, no empathy, no compassion. Why? Because they don't live with us. We ain't family. You stop giving it to them too. Real talk. Stop giving it to them too. Because to these corporations, you're not a person. Not to these people. To these people, you are a payment. Do you understand? To these people, you are a payment. Yep, nothing more, nothing less than that. We are there to finance their lifestyle. That's it. That's it. That's why rent increases have outpaced wage growth every single year. Not some years, not half, every year. That's capitalism talking to you, saying we want that money, we want that money, we want that money. So it doesn't matter how much more money you make on your job. If the cost of living far exceeds that every year, you're always running uphill in mud. There is no way out every time. You're always going to be running uphill in mud because the system will be set up that way. And the landlords know it because they know you really can't afford to leave. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You got a landlord that won't fix everything. They raise your rent every year, and your wages haven't kept up with the increases. So you can't afford to move, right? Because moving requires you to save up money towards a down payment, right? You got to pay to move. You got to rent a moving truck, all these things. So you might have to take off a day or two from work. All this stuff costs money. Everybody ain't got it to do those types of things. Everybody ain't got it. So sometimes people end up in situations stuck. And not because they're not good people, not because they don't deserve to live in a better environment, but because the way the system is set up, they're always running uphill in mud. They need a head start. They need a head start. But the landlords know you're stuck. They know you can't afford to leave, so they don't fix any leaks. They don't treat the mold. They just wait you out till you leave. Then they'll do the bare minimum of fixing that they do, and they'll rinse and repeat and rent that place out back to another person, continuing that same daggone cycle. That's all. Rinse and repeat that same cycle over and over and over again. We don't win from that, you guys. They've been lying, and they're going to keep lying as long as you allow the lies. Okay? Because you need to understand that your home is someone else's profit margin. See, that's the real landlord strategy. That's what you didn't realize. Your home is a profit margin, and they're not going to allow you to mess up their profit margin. Nope. Ain't that simple. Ain't that simple anymore, anyway. You won't mess up their profit margin. And I know you're wondering, like, I'm suffering like this. I need help. I don't know what to do. Like, what are my options? And then you think in your mind for a quick second, you go, well, where the hell is my government in all of this? They're there. Government is right there. Yeah, they're right there. Public housing is crumbling. They're not handling it because they too busy. They want to give out Section 8 vouchers. That's what they started doing many decades ago. But now they can't even do that because the wait lists are years and years long. And some cities don't even take any more people that need housing. That's how bad of a crisis we are with housing. Government has allowed the investors to come in and take over neighborhoods. Government hasn't kept rent control steady so that people can have affordable housing. But they also haven't stayed on landlords and those who own properties and using them as rental properties so that they're habitable and safe, and that you get the bang for your buck. Government has totally they just turn their back on it like nothing's happening. But we all know it's something happened because we live in these communities. We live in these communities. And when there's no more affordable housing, when we start wanting to have this discussion about building more affordable housing, so many people are quick to say, not in my backyard. Not here. We can't have affordable housing here. Because the thought is, I don't want to live around people that need it. What? I was taught if not for the grace of God, it could be me. So seeing people act that way is confusing to me. I'm like, wait a minute. So these people need affordable housing, and we need affordable housing, but not in my community though. See, that's when the selfishness, that's when that America really kicks in. Not here. Yeah, I know you need it, but not here. And zoning laws make it illegal to build multifamily housing in huge areas of cities. So again, it's designed to keep poor folks boxed out. It's by design. None of this is an accident, everybody. I need you to understand none of it's an accident. It's all purposeful. And when they identify that a piece of their design isn't doing what they expected it to do, they will fix it. They'll fix that part of the design and make sure that it inflicts the punishment, the pain, deliberately on its target market. Yeah, just so y'all know. Just so you know. Once the system is created, that doesn't mean that it's never refined. Of course it's refined. You take a look at what's working, you keep what's working, and you get rid of what isn't working, right? Isn't that how it works? Absolutely, that's how it works. And these people are doing the exact same thing. Because understand, if nobody wants anybody living in their neighborhood and keeping folk out of the neighborhood, because not in my backyard stuff. Guess what happens to those people who still end up with no homes? They get criminalized. That's when homelessness becomes a crime because you can't find affordable housing, or better yet, because society won't create enough affordable housing. Because it's not really about what you can't find, more so than it's about what society refuses to participate in. You're criminalized for being homeless. You're ticketed for sleeping outside. You're harassed for panhandling. Poverty then becomes a crime. Why couldn't you just be born rich? Then we wouldn't have to harass you so much. That's what we are at that point. That's what we are at that point. I wouldn't have to, what did I say? I wouldn't have to harass you if you was born with a silver spoon in your mouth. What? We shouldn't have, that should not be the default setting. And understand, if everybody was born rich, I go back to the same thing that I say all the time. Who's going to watch your children? Who's going to cook your food, clean your house? Because rich people ain't really fit to do all those things. You got to ask yourself about the conditioning that you were taught. The conditioning that you were taught that being poor meant that you were less than. Poor means you don't have a lot of money. It doesn't mean you're broke and bankrupt in every single fashion and way. That ain't what that means. But rich people who want to criminalize poverty will have you thinking that. Because, see, they would rather criminalize homelessness than solve it. Understand. Because solving it means dealing with capitalism. Y'all got to understand that this beast that is capitalism does this to all of us. Right? I want to tell you about a couple of stats that I looked up before I started taping this episode, because I wanted to look at it. I said, hold up. Let me see what's going on. These are just a couple of the rough numbers associated with housing. 3.6 million eviction cases are filed in the U.S. every year. That's roughly 7 every minute. 7 eviction cases every minute are getting filed. That's insane. As of 2024, renters need to earn at least almost $30 an hour to afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the United States, more than double the federal minimum wage. So, in order to afford a modest 2-bedroom in America, you need to make double the minimum wage. Well, more than double. I'm sorry, because minimum wage was $7.25. So that's really only $14.50 an hour. You need to make almost $30 an hour to afford a basic apartment, a basic house. Nothing extravagant. This is what I was alluding to at the beginning of this episode. The definition of luxury is not what we're used to it being. Luxury in those terms is just literally a building, a place that's sort of clean. That's luxury. That's why I say, oh, how the mighty have fallen. Because that's not the definition of luxury. It certainly is not the definition of luxury that rich people use. It certainly is not the definition of luxury that rich people use. But you tell me, how many people do you know making $30 an hour? $30 an hour. I remember when my first apartment was only, what is it, $4.25, all utilities included? You ain't getting that now. Come on. See, back then you could live on minimum wage on your own because it didn't cost as much to live. That's not our reality now. They say more than 50% of renters are considered cost burdened, meaning they spend over 30% of their income on rent. Listen, I've seen 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90% of payroll spent on rent or mortgage because they're pricing us out. The ability to live has gotten so ridiculous. Every faction of your life is monetized. Everything. And if they can't monetize it, they want to get rid of it. Because they got to be able to monetize it. Another thing y'all need to understand about homelessness, I'm just rattling off a couple more stats for you guys to understand how bad this is. In many metro areas, 1 in 5 homeless people are employed, full-time or part-time. These people are working. These people are working. It's not that they don't want to contribute to society. It's that society abandoned them for money. That's what happened. Society abandoned them for money. Fix my earbud here. But that's what happened. Societies abandoned them for money. In 2023, they say over 140,000 public school students were identified as homeless, living in cars, motels, shelters, or doubled up with other families. I can believe that. I can believe that. It's one thing to be homeless alone, but then when you have your children too. America should be embarrassed by that. We shouldn't have children that don't have a home. And not because their parents don't work, not because their parents are lazy, because the system is set up so it's not designed for you to have a home. They make more money off of you being home less than having a home. See, it's money in your homelessness too. They're going to monetize everything that they can. Everything they can monetize, they're going to monetize. But that shouldn't be a normal thing. Living in motels. That shouldn't be normal. You think now do you see why a lot of motels have long-term stays and how they give discounts for long-term stays? Because they know people are living in motels like apartments now because it becomes over time it's more expensive to live in places like that. Ultimately, it's more expensive, right? But you got to do what you got to do. What am I supposed to do? I don't have a choice. Sometimes when you need a place to stay, you need a place to stay. And if it's clean, it's safe, then guess what? Families are going to do what they need to do. But note, remember when I told you guys earlier, I said, where is government in all of this? Because corporations are doing a lot of it. Where is government? Government is there. But understand that these investors, they're all over our neighborhoods. And for many of us, we may not even notice that investors are everywhere in our neighborhoods. But statistics say, like the facts say, large investors bought 1 in 7 U.S. homes sold in 2023. They focused heavily. Now watch, this is their strategy. They focused heavily on low income and high need rental markets. You think they're coming there to buy property to give people affordable housing who are struggling? Nope. It's to prey on them. Because see, also the goal is, right, that they can partner with government to get some type of subsidy to subsidize the rent of the low income individual. So now the corporation gets money from the government and money from you too. That's the game that they play. That's the game that's played. Median rents in the U.S. rose 31%. I'm going to say that again. Median rents in the United States rose 31% between 2019 and 2023, while real wages grew less than 10%. You're never You're never going to stay ahead of the game like that. The math won't allow you to. Do you understand? The math ain't mathing. So you're never going to be able to get to that next step because it doesn't work for you to do that. So it's never going, the system won't allow you to. It's not going to allow you to break it. It's not going to allow you to. And understand all this homelessness and all of this insecurity when it comes to having a secure, safe, and clean place to call home, it does something to your mental. Oh, it does. It does. Let's talk about what it does to your mind, because it does. If you think for 1 second being homeless doesn't have any impact on people, somebody lied to you. Because when your housing is unstable, everything becomes uncertain. Everything. You're living in survival mode. Survival mode, constant stress, anxiety, shame, because you don't want nobody to know. Kids bouncing from school to school, because every time you got to move places, you have to reside in a place that's in your school district, right? Otherwise, they're going to say your child can't go to that school anymore. Yeah, it's a domino effect when you don't have security in where you live. Families split up. People end up staying in abusive relationships or staying in places that aren't good for them because they cannot afford to leave. Real talk. They just can't afford to leave. It's not that they don't want to. They don't have the resources. They don't have the resources. Understand, homelessness is not just about the rent. It's also about your dignity too. People forget about that. They forget about that. They forget about, just because I don't have a place to stay does not mean I don't have any value. That's not what that means. Folks get it all messed up. Yeah, folks get it all messed up. I am not my housing situation. Catch it. I have to say that because I think sometimes people forget that. You're not just your circumstance. You are more than that. You are more than that. That's why when I watch all this stuff happening, I go, a big part of why we have um so much of this housing insecurity um is because it's all about money. It's all about money. It's all about money. Everything's about money. And there comes a point where money cannot be the highest priority. It can't always be the highest priority, because when money becomes the only motivator, the most important motivator, you're going to start doing things and make decisions about people, places, and things that are not good. Remember, if you are paying 50, 60 to 70% of your income on rent, if you're having to do that, that is really not sustainable. Think about it. That ain't sustainable. Cause at some point it's only so much money you can make. The world gonna cap you out in a certain, to a certain degree. You get capped out, right? So if you're paying the bulk of your payroll just on paying rent or mortgage, how how are you supposed to stay ahead like that? Understand, and you're not by yourself. Over half of all renters in this country are in the same damn boat. You are not alone. So if you've been thinking, how come it's so difficult? How come it's so hard? Because it's by design. It's not an accident. It's not that you're not making the right decisions. It's that the system is set up to keep you down. That's what's happening. Yeah, that's what's happening. Unfortunately. And I'm laughing not at you, at the ridiculousness of the situation that we're here. Y'all, we can change it. We're not stuck with it. You change it by changing your government, because government has helped a lot of this. Has helped a lot of this. Because understand, it doesn't just impact families or young people. Senior citizens are caught up in this. The elderly get caught up in this. They're on fixed incomes. So if the rent keeps going up, but my wages haven't gone up, my fixed income hasn't gone up, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think happens to mama and pawpaw? They get put out. They get put out. And y'all got to understand, these landlords are not just your standard issued mom and pop shops anymore. That's not what your landlord is anymore. These are corporations backed by Wall Street. Now it's not a mom and pop organization, a landlord that you can just call up and have a conversation with. Listen, I need to talk to you. You can't do that now. Now, no, because now it's a corporation, it's a computer that's making a lot of the decisions, typing up those letters and sending them to your mailbox. Yeah. It's not a relationship that you can create with your landlord anymore. Nobody cares about creating a relationship. Y'all got to remember, these are not homes to investors. These are revenue streams to investors. That's what you need to understand. It's a revenue stream, baby. To them, they don't take it personal. It's just business. You need to take it personal. Real stuff. We got to take it personal. The average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in America is $1,500. 1500. I told you my first apartment was $425. All utilities included. Most people are paying on average $1,500 for a one bedroom, plus you paying utilities. A lot of times utilities aren't even included anymore. How are Americans going to be able to afford that? Newsflash, they can't. That's why we have so much homelessness in America. And remember what I told you, these are working people, most of them. They're not people that don't have jobs. These are people who report to work every day. Every time they're on shift, they report to work every time. Every time. For example, there's a teacher in Arizona. They were featured on the news last year. I'm looking up some information about it, and I see it here. And they were sleeping in their car between shifts. And it wasn't because this teacher had issues. Nah, it wasn't that at all. It wasn't that at all. Guess why it was happening? Guess why it was happening? Guess why it was happening? They had to live in their car. She was in her car because, not because she made bad choices, because she was paying back student loans. Check out that student loan episode where I talk about. See, it's all interconnected. These systems all work together to keep you oppressed and poor and in poverty and struggling. But she's paying back student loans, and the rent in her area shot up 35% in 2 years. So she couldn't afford to have a place to stay anymore. It was pay her student loans or be homeless. And she knew if she didn't pay them student loans, she was going to be homeless anyway. So she went on ahead and paid the student loan. Because, see, that's the T. Yeah, because if you don't pay, they'll take everything. And I mean everything, mama. Okay? They'll take everything. And not because they need it, because they can. That's what I need y'all to understand. I got another example. A security guard in Houston, working night shifts, who had to live in his car because he made just enough not to qualify for assistance, but not enough to actually pay rent and bills. I know there are some of you out here listening who identify with that. You're not poor enough for government to help you, but you are poor enough where you can't afford to live on your own. That is reality for millions of Americans. And again, it's not that they're not working. It's not that they're not working. That's not the issue. That ain't even the issue, that they're not working. The issue is that the system is not working for them. Because wages have barely gone up 10% in the same time that housing costs have increased. But in America, they treat housing like a stock portfolio. They really do. In America, it's all about the money, baby. It's all about the money. And there's proof to show it. There's proof to show it. In 2022, a report came from the House Financial Services Committee. It confirmed that corporate landlords were more likely to issue eviction filings during the pandemic than small landlords. Of course, because you're just money to the big business. You're just numbers. You're just a thing. They have no relationship with you. The relationship is the money. And when you stop paying the money, the relationship is over. Catch it. Now, keep in mind, these same corporations that were booting people out were also receiving millions in federal aid. Huh. So they got your tax dollars, but then kicked you out when you were struggling. Because there are no relationships anymore. It's just money. Everything's about money. You don't have people that own the building or own your unit that you can have conversations with and have relationships with. Now it's just money. And if the computer doesn't see you as valuable, it's going to tell the rich people so. There's nowhere to hide, not from the computer. And I'm going to repeat, these companies got bailed out by your money and my money, our taxpayer money. And they still evicted people who couldn't make the rent due to the pandemic. It's not an accident, y'all. It's business. I told you, it is business. It's cold-hearted. It's calculated. They don't care about you. They don't care about your families. They don't care about your struggle. They don't care. And remember, these corporations are backed by private equity firms. And private equity firms care about nothing but making money. That's it. And they're not buying homes. They're buying up the neighborhood. They're buying up the culture. They're buying up the family environments. They're buying up what essentially is like they're controlling our lives and every facet of it. They're monetizing every facet of it by also buying up our neighborhoods. And once they control the market, they get to name whatever prices they want. And understand, as soon as these corporations and private equity firms don't see any money in our communities, they're going to dump those properties and leave those same communities destitute and barren. because that's what they do. That's what they do. Because again, creating this instability really makes it hard for people to focus and live their best life. It makes it hard. How are you going to do all those things when you're trying to figure out where you're going to sleep tonight? And every night, you got to have that discussion with yourself. Every night, you got to think and have those thoughts. Yeah, you're going to be feeling some type of way and you're going to have a tough time. It's hard to dream when you don't even know where you're sleeping. You get that? This is why we have to solve. Look, I had to fix that. I had a fluster. This is why we have to solve our housing crisis in America. Do you know how much innovation we're missing out on? How much great ideas and products and services and things that we could create, that people could create, but they can't think in those headspaces because they're just trying to survive. That's not okay. And I know you've been asking and listening through all of this. So, yeah, I hear everything you're saying, Bishop. So, what do we do? Because I know that's a big, what do we do? We know the obvious, Captain Obvious, like they say. We know that. What do we do? First, we got to stop blaming the people who are suffering. Stop vilifying homeless people. Stop doing that stuff. Because if not for the grace of God, it could be you in the same boat with them. It's not that they didn't try. It's not that they aren't trying. The system is the system because the system is failing. What y'all seeing is it's failing. I mean, it's successful in the way for rich people to get as much money as they can get out of it, but it's failing at the same time because they're running out of spaces to get that money. See, they've oppressed the rest of us so much. They're running out of spaces to get that money. Because, see, we support tenant unions, rent control, eviction protections. We call out greedy landlords and politicians that let them thrive. You got to call it out, y'all. It never's going to change if you don't. What you can do, stay in contact with your elected official. Go use the resources accessible to you in your local municipalities because you do have protections as a renter, as a homeowner. Use those things at your that are there for your benefit. Your tax dollars paid for them. Go to the news organizations if you need to, if you feel like you're being exploited or taken advantage of. The point is you can do something. And if you're in this situation, if you're couch surfing, you're struggling to pay rent, you're hiding eviction notices, just know, baby, you are not alone. You ain't alone. It is millions of Americans going through the same thing. You're not alone and you're not worthless. And you're not invisible. No, you're not. See, somewhere along the way, we forgot. Frankly, housing should be a right. So, I don't know what happened to us, but so many of us have fallen and bumped our head and cracked it open to the white meat that we forgot about basic things. Somebody having a home to stay in, a clean, safe place to stay, that they can lay their head every night, food, an ability to make money so they can take care of themselves. Those things should just be right. Health care that doesn't bankrupt you. Frankly, it should be free. Like, some things should just be a part of life. But housing is a human right. It's not a prize. It's not a privilege, and definitely shouldn't be a profit game. It shouldn't be. Our lives are worth more than their real estate portfolios, no matter what the rich say. We have to demand it. But we are worth more, and we do deserve more. Thank each and every one of you for joining me today for this podcast, where we have talked in detail about this homelessness epidemic in America and keeping how affordable housing is almost becoming like an urban legend. Like you hear about it, but you've never seen it kind of thing. We shouldn't have to live that way. It's not okay. I thank each and every one of you. Share this episode with folks so they understand how all of these games get played, and sit down with people that you know and start having these hard conversations. Start having these hard conversations and keep fighting like your life depends on it, because it does. Because it does. For a lot of folks, it absolutely does. Now, I'm going to tell you, the way I always tell you. Don't you let nobody live rent-free. Let's start over. Look, let's rewind that. I tried to be smooth with it, but we're going to go back and run it through again so I can be smooth with it. Again, thank you for listening. Thank you for checking out the newest episode of the Straight No Chaser podcast. Until next time, don't you feed the trolls, and don't you let nobody live rent-free in your head. And remember, I've always told you, you can accomplish anything you put your mind to, as long as you stay consistent. Peace.